Hey everybody, welcome to the Obery Project's Criminal Justice. This is a new series that I'm trying based on a lot of the things that I've seen or been through, aspects of my life and portions of different lives I've lived, places I've been, things I've seen that have, for one thing, helped contribute to where I am and what I do now. I know a lot of my channel's mostly academic in focus, but I'm hoping that a lot of these things can help contribute to why I have the worldview I have today and why I do what I do today. Now, a large portion of my life, maybe about 12 years, was spent in and out of the criminal justice system, in and out of jails, in and out of diversionary programs, spending most of my time drug seeking, because for many years I was a drug addict. I was an opiate using drug addict. So when it was street, it was heroin. When it was doctors, it was Dilaudid, it was hydrocodone, morphine, just about any opiate I could get. Now, without getting too much into how that came about, because maybe that's something for another time, what I thought I would do with this video is just to tell people who have either not experienced this, or if, say, they have a loved one or somebody they know that might be looking at experiencing something like this, to help you to understand what can happen or does happen to people that get arrested. What can be expected if you get arrested. This is all from my own experience. A number of these things can change depending on the state that you're in, the municipality that you're in, or the county you're in. If you happen to end up in the federal system because for some reason there's a federal charge or something. And it's not just, and I use the term loosely, criminals, as, say, the state, county, municipality, or federal government deems someone a criminal, because they deem a lot of people criminals for a lot of acts that and I would say not just me, but a lot of other people find to be immoral. They should not deem these things as criminal acts, and they fill up their jails and prisons pretty well by keeping these things criminalized. So, before I start, let me say this. I am, of course, not an attorney, not a professor, I'm not a doctor, I'm not any kind of expert, so I am not dispensing any sort of professional advice, okay? This is simply what I've witnessed. This is things that I have done or what I would do based on experiences that I've had, things I've seen, things I've been through, because I may not have been through as much and seen as much as, say, some of these guys out there who spent many years in federal penitentiaries, state penitentiaries, and other situations, people who have worked as associates for the mob or in organized crime, things like that. Nothing like that. We're just talking about a guy, a small town kid, naive kid who had to, in a way, quickly and radically begin to experience the rigors of the criminal justice system at a relatively old age, because a lot of the people that I met when I started experiencing these things, this was mostly in my very late 20s, about 29, 30, I started experiencing these things. So I was about 10 years behind a lot of others. I mean, a lot of A lot of people actually start a life of drug addiction or various kinds of crime much earlier. So I was at least a good 10 years behind. I met a lot of guys on the inside who had been doing this as far as in and out of institutions since they were an adolescent. I mean, before they even hit teen years, they were in and out of institutions and had been that way most of their lives. So here's some of the things I want to tell you about what you might expect if it's you who ends up in jail, or if it's somebody that you know, what they're probably going to experience. And of course, every jail's different. I've been in municipal jails that their policies are different, definitely different than county jails are. And jails can be different from one county to the other, and they can be different from one state to the other as far as their policies, how they do things. And really, at the end of the day, jails all have, as well as prisons, all have a sort of an essential mandate or rule that really allows them to do just about anything that they deem necessary. Which makes it tough, and you should be aware of that. I mean, even for people who go in and they're treated very poorly in a lot of ways, the facility is very nasty, and so on and so forth, and they don't get this that they think they should get, or, you know, they just know they should have a right to this or that or the other. I don't want you to be let down too much when you find out that you're not going to get things in a timely manner or in the way that you think you should get them, because all of these institutions, they all have certain mandates, certain rules or clauses in the laws that govern these institutions that essentially says they can basically override any of these specific rules that they're supposed to be following if they deem whatever it is instead that they have to do, whether they deem that necessary for running the institution in a proper way. And that can just be just about anything. So for most people, when they go to jail for the first time, it is, if you've never been arrested before, it is a very rude awakening. And it's, you know, a lot of people, it's a really traumatic experience. I knew people who wouldn't go back and serve. They had gotten arrested. They had been bonded out before they even hit population. And they chose to go on, in a number of instances, they chose to go on years of probation rather than just going in jail and serving out a 30-day sentence, a 60-day sentence. They took years of probation. And anybody who has been on probation or in and out of jail can tell you that what we typically call probation in jail is jail or incarceration on an installment program. If you take that probation and you have not absolutely changed everything, and you're still doing or living the way that you were, you're going to be back in that jail. Gonna be back in that jail, probably numerous times. And if you continue on that trajectory, you're just going to end up being there with no other chances on the probation or any other programs, and you're eventually going to get sentenced to either serve out a certain amount of time, which you could have done in the first place at county level, or you're going to end up in state prison. So look, there's a few ways that somebody is going to end up in jail. When I say end up in jail, what I literally mean is being taken to jail. This is what I'm talking about. The process of being taken to jail and what's going to happen when you get to jail. Now, this is just a conglomeration of so I've been incarcerated 13 or more times, arrested and incarcerated 13 or more times. I have been in at least 7 or more jails, either municipal or city jail or county jails. So this is just basically your conglomeration of all those different experiences and different jails and what you'll basically expect. Smaller jails, like small town jails, small municipal jails, or even small, sparsely populated counties that don't experience much crime, the experience might be far better. But I wouldn't roll the dice and count on it. Okay? So I have been in some that are not great. I have not been in the worst ones, I had the good fortune of never ending up in Cook County Jail, and I lived very near Cook County, so that's Chicago. Known plenty of people that have ended up in Cook County Jail. And there's some things I can tell you that I got firsthand from people whose judgment and the stories they told me I trust. It's usually about 3 ways you're going to end up in jail, being taken to jail. The one way is if you end up being taken to a new jail from another facility. So if you either served out a little bit of time in another county jail and there's an outstanding warrant for you in an adjoining or whatever county, maybe in another state, after you get done with your time at that jail, before they release you, they're going to run a check to make sure you have no outstanding warrants. If you do, and sometimes you can get that information beforehand. You can request that, and they'll run, and they'll tell you. You can request at different times. You can put in a request form, or what they would call flying a kite. Now, they use flying a kite in a lot of different ways, sometimes derogatory, sometimes just if you want to find out something, you need to fly a kite to this, that, the other person in the jail staff to find out things. Sometimes you can find out if you have that outstanding warrant while you're in, before you even get your release date. Because a lot of guys, they don't want to get to that day or really near that day and find out they have an outstanding warrant in another county, somewhere, another state. And I've seen that happen. And you talk about depressing. Now, I had that happen, and I knew that it was likely going to show up. I was going to get released from a city jail, and I was on probation in another county, and I thought, we'll see, but I was pretty sure they'd find it. They didn't. This particular city jail was a mess, and anybody who's been in it will tell you it's a mess, and it's run pretty messy. They dressed me out in my civilian clothes, walked me to the last door, cracked the door, and when they cracked the door, one of the guys in main control said, whoa, hold up. He has a warrant for this county. And they said more than that. They said, what are you doing? We haven't even finished the check. You were about to let him out. They almost let me out. I almost walked right out of there. And believe me, as soon as I would have gotten out that door, I would have gone as fast as I can to those front doors. And when I got out of that building, I would have ran probably a few blocks and hid. Because I knew by the time I had done that bit in that jail, I knew they were going to run the check. So anyways, you can get brought in from another institution. Prisons, jails, things like that. That's one way. And people who do, they're already familiar with the system. So it's not anything. The second way is you can turn yourself in. So if you find out you have an outstanding warrant, one of the ways, there's a few ways people find out they have an outstanding warrant. Unfortunately, a lot of times people find out they have an outstanding warrant simply from like a traffic stop. So maybe you were speeding, or you didn't turn on your turn signal or something, made a turn, the cop behind you wanted to pull you over, give you an infraction, they take your license, they run your license, and they see that you have an outstanding warrant for somewhere. And if you do have an outstanding warrant for somewhere, they're not going to let you know and say, you really need to turn yourself in. They're going to arrest you. And then so it's surprise. But if you do find out you have an outstanding warrant, one of the ways that you're going to find out typically is attorneys, when they see that local attorneys for whatever the jurisdiction is, when they see that certain people, an outstanding warrant comes up for certain people, a lot of attorneys' offices have this system where they send out a letter letting them know who they are, that they can provide them with representation. They tell them the charge they're being charged with. And sometimes they'll give you a sort of an idea of what you might be looking at. They don't usually quote prices, not that I've ever seen on those letters, but they will tell you, get in touch with us. You call them up. They'll put you pretty much right to an attorney. That attorney will look up your charge real quick. And they'll tell you what they're looking for you at. They'll say, we can help you out with this. You'll probably do this, this, and this, and it will cost you this. That's one of the ways that a lot of people find out that there's an outstanding warrant. I found that out 2 times, that there was a warrant. And the second time I had the means that I did call an attorney, and he told me what to do. He said, look, my defense will cost this much. Your bond is going to be this much. At the time, I didn't have a bond and it was in a court I did not want to be in because I knew who the judge was. They were a sadist. So I said, well, can I get it? Look, I called the attorney that I called, it was well known that this attorney was the ex-husband of this particular judge. And because this attorney was the ex-husband of this particular judge, if you hired this attorney, he would get the case thrown out of her court due to a conflict of interests, because he couldn't be arguing cases before his ex-wife. It was kind of a nice way to get out of this woman's court, because she was known to be a nasty person, specifically with drug-related charges. So then they might tell you, okay, I can get it in this court. I'm going to get this sort of bond, because usually a certain felony has certain bonds. Sometimes they can vary. And they'll tell you, turn yourself in. And what they'll do it like this. They'll say, okay, Class D felony theft, Class D felony possession. Go to the jail. If you can, bring someone with you that has the money. If you can't do that, a lot of times the attorneys can arrange something where you can give them the money, and they can post. Because what's going to happen is, no matter how that money goes in, even if you have to go into the jail with the money with you, that money's going to go on your books. And if the attorney has worked it out, and they usually will, they won't tell you to go in unless they've got it worked out to where you can immediately bond. So what it's going to be is a process of you turning yourself in. You'll go into the lobby of the jail. You'll tell them you're there for a warrant. You're here to turn yourself in. They'll tell you to wait. A jail guard will come out of one of the doors. They will take you back. They typically won't cuff you or anything like that. They'll just take you back to the intake or booking department, and they'll start the process, which I'll go over in a minute, okay? And then what will happen is, when they're done with the process, they have to book you. And depending on that attorney, if that attorney's good, they're worth their salt and they're worth the money you're paying them. Which, by the way, if you end up paying them $1,500 on a Class D felony, I guarantee you the amount of work they put in time, altogether for you probably amounts to somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of hours, $1,500. I've seen guys that were in there for Class B felonies or even A felonies, and that's serious stuff. A felonies like murder or some kind of, I don't want to say racketeering, but something like that, like a big conspiracy charge. These people's families spending 30, 40, 50,000 up on these attorneys. And actually, it goes a lot higher than that. And I'm not talking about big-time mobsters or people with lots of money. I'm talking about people who literally are being charged with murder or something really severe. If you catch a B or an A felony, that's severe stuff. But if you're like D felony, which is the worst felony that I was ever charged with, on multiple occasions, the typical criminal defense attorney will quote you somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, depending on how much time they figure they're going to have to put in. Okay, so that's the second way. You go in, you have the money or the money arranged for bond, and they literally just book you in and get you right back out the door. You're in there for as long as it takes to book, and your attorney, if they're good, and most will know this if they're practicing in a certain jurisdiction, they'll tell you when to go in there so you can get out faster. They're not going to tell you to go at certain times that are usually, they're not going to tell you to go in there on a Friday or a Saturday night, okay? And they're not going to tell you to go in there on a weekend. Go in there on a weekday when it's slow. They're not going to tell you to go in there on the weekdays when intake is trying to shackle up everybody to take them to court. They're going to tell you the window that is the best time to get you in and out. And if they don't get you in and out of there fast enough, and they are a competent attorney, they're going to make noise, and they're going to get you out of there, because they're not going to get a lot of they're not going to be hired a lot if it gets around, and it will get around, that they're not taking care of you, that they can't get you in and out of there fast, they're incompetent or anything like that. Okay? And it gets around. Everybody knows. If you spend a little bit of time in county jail, you're going to know what attorneys are good for what. Typically. So the third way, which is the most unpleasant way, is you're going to get arrested. And you're not going to have planned for it. The people who have planned for it are the ones who have been in jail quite a few times, and they already know what they're up against when they go in. This is for the people who have either never been in jail before, or maybe one other time on something, whatever, years before, to where it's kind of left their mind, and all of a sudden, surprise, you have a warrant for something you didn't even know. I've been picked up on, I was picked up on like a debt warrant that I wasn't fully aware of because I changed my address once or twice. And I had a warrant to appear for a debt hearing through a certain court. And I didn't, because I didn't know. And they issued an arrest warrant. And I was held. Was that a weekend? Yeah, it was at least a day or so I was held. And then they took me to the court where all of this was arranged through, and I had to see this person, and I had to tell him, I didn't know I was supposed to show for that. I've changed my address a few times. Things have been really in flux. I have a job. I don't have a problem with making these payments, and I am sorry that I haven't kept up on them. And I would have come to the next one to arrange things with this. It's sort of a prosecutor. It's like a prosecutor for debtor's prison. They have these people come in, and they just sit with them at this desk outside of one of the courtrooms, and he just basically tells them how it's going to be, or you tell him what you can do. That's your appearance. But if you don't appear for that, they can come and arrest you. and you have to sit in that jail. You aren't going to bond out of it. You have to sit there until you see the judge, and hopefully they're going to arrest you on a day when you can see the judge the next day. Let's hope they don't come and arrest you on a Friday, or you're going to be sitting there till Monday. Because county, state, federal, they work 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and they take more holidays than anybody else I'm even aware of. So you're not seeing anybody at those times. So when you get arrested, you can get arrested for a lot of reasons. One reason I say you can get arrested from a traffic stop. In the case of a traffic stop, the arresting officer or officers, and most times if they see that you have a warrant almost for anything, they're going to call for backup. There's probably going to be at least 2 squad cars, sometimes more. There could be anywhere from 2 to 10 cops there to arrest you, just depending on how much free time they have or if they think you might be a problem. There could be a lot of cops there. I've had arrests where the place was swarming with cops, undercover and uniform cops. So something like that, traffic stop, they see you got a warrant. Chances are they're not going to question you, about this, that, or the other, because it's no point. You've got a warrant. They're going to put the cuffs on. They're going to take you in. No matter what, if you get arrested by a uniform officer, plain clothes, undercover, whoever it is, here's me. If I am arrested, I don't care who it is, I'm not talking to them. I've made the mistake in the past, with this real early on, before I had been arrested a few times and saw the way that things go, and the way that cops lie to you. They lie to you. They absolutely lie to you. They will lie to you. They can lie to you. It's perfectly legal, and it is encouraged within their ranks to absolutely lie to you. They make you promises they'll never keep. They will. They'll tell you, if you tell us this, that, or the other, I might be able, and then they'll give you just really generalities, go easy on you. If you tell us this, the judge will take that into consideration. Judges don't care. They don't care. These are just things they tell you to either coerce you into making their job and their life easier, because that's what it comes down to. They want you to make their job and their life easier. I always found that the few times that I did talk to cops, and no, I wasn't talking to cops as far as like telling on somebody else or anything like that, the more that I talked to them, told them why I was where I was at, or what I was doing, or what is this, or what is that, those kinds of questions they gave me, the more I talked to them, the more I got in trouble, the harder it was for me to try to in any way, shape, or form defend myself. Because again, a lot of the times I was arrested, I wasn't doing something in the eyes of a common law court that would be considered criminal. It was oftentimes things that were, in my opinion, very wrongly criminalized. So me, I would say me, I will not talk to cops. If they should come up, if I'm walking somewhere, and perhaps they come up, they ask me who I am, what I'm doing around there or something, I'm not under arrest. I might ask them why. Why do you need to know? What is something wrong? What's going on? But it's really tricky because there's cops have so much power on site. If if it's in the course of an investigation or an arrest. They have so much power on site. You got to be real careful about the way that you deal with them, what you say. You know, if you're like, well, what you want to know what I'm doing here, you know, and this and that and the other, but there's no, you don't have any reason for stopping me or asking me what you want me to do. Got to be kind of careful with that. To be perfectly honest, I mean, if I'm walking somewhere, I got my ID on me, and they stop me, they want to know who I am, I might ask them, why are you stopping me? That's a perfectly legitimate question. Why are you stopping? Why do you want to know? I'm a guy out taking a walk. Do you have reason to believe that I'm not supposed to be here? Is something wrong? I usually want to ask them why are they even stopping me? But as far as them, you know, what are you doing here? What's this? What's that? What's the other? Once the questions start, that's when I shut off. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to answer their questions or anything. But you know, that's always tricky. And the thing is there's never really anything, especially when it's in the context of an arrest, there's really never anything you're going to tell them that's going to work in your favor. That's pretty much across the board. Most attorneys worth their salt are going to tell you that there's not much that anybody's ever told a cop that worked out in their favor. The things they tell you and the promises they make you. Anyways, with the arrest itself, I've always cooperated. Like there's... all right. So look, honest stuff right here. As far as the physical act of being arrested, I've always cooperated. In the sense of once they have me for sure, I know they have me for sure, I have cooperated. Because by that point in time, there's going to be multiple cops, plain clothes, in uniform, well trained. Oftentimes they get ones very big and not super smart or moral. Not always, but there's a lot of them. And boy, they sure don't care if they have to give you a beat down in order to get those cuffs on and get you in the car and get you to jail. In fact, a lot of them would prefer it that way. Because there are a lot of guys out there who are either a little bit sadistic, or maybe things aren't great at home or something. This doesn't really mean that, you know, all cops, I think all cops are bad. I don't think any cops serve a good system. But I don't think all cops are bad people. It's just that there's a lot of them that are pretty violent. There are a lot of them that are a little bit sadistic. And, you know, once you know that they got you, the process is going down. You're going to be cuffed. You're going to be put in the car. You're going to be taken. It is really just the stupidest thing in the world to resist at that time. It is. Believe me. However, I will tell you, based on my own experience, what I've done is, if they don't have me, they don't have me. And they only have me once they have me, and they don't have an ID on me. They don't have a positive ID on me until they stop me and arrest me and take my ID or take my prints and confirm. Until then, they have hearsay and speculation. If they don't have me physically, they don't have anything. Do they have camera footage from their vehicles, things like that? Yeah, but you know, you tend to have to get pretty close to the vehicles for positive identification. What I'm saying is, there have been times when I have been rolled up on, and I knew the way that things were going, that I made myself scarce. And I did what I had to do to try to keep myself from getting arrested and going to jail, because being arrested and going to jail is a terrible experience. I don't care how many times you've been in there. And especially if you're a drug addict. If you're a drug addict, you know that when you get arrested, you're going to jail. You know you're going to sit, because drug addicts don't usually have the money to just post their bond. Yeah, they don't walk around with $1,500, $2,000 for, let's say, a D felony possession, like possession of a syringe, which the one county I got arrested probably more than anywhere else was Porter County, Indiana. In Porter County, Indiana, they'll charge you with a D felony just for having a syringe. They can charge you for a D felony if you're driving a car where somebody in the car has possession of drugs. You don't even have to know about it. And that's one of the things they'll threaten you with. If you don't talk to us, we're gonna charge you with maintaining a common nuisance because you were driving this vehicle, whether you even own the vehicle or not. This has happened to me. We're going to charge you with maintaining a common nuisance because you were driving this car, and in that car other people had drugs and paraphernalia. They call it a paraphernalia charge. That was one of the charges I had that stuck because I didn't talk to them. So what? Maintaining a common nuisance, but they can do it. They can charge you with that. So, just letting you know, maybe if you're emotional, if it's one of those things where, say, somebody called the cops because you're having an argument with someone or a spouse or whatever, and it doesn't even go into some kind of place where there was an assault, anything like that, but they show up because sometimes they'll call the cops just because people are arguing. Nothing even bad has happened. People are arguing, they'll call the cops. Let's say you're drinking, but you're drinking in your own house. You're perfectly, within your rights or whatever. And they decide that they're gonna arrest you. They're gonna decide, we want to take this person away from this situation because we think that, and again, usually they'll only do that if one or the other talks to them and tells them whatever. If they show up somewhere and they talk to people, and one or the other of any of those people they talk to, because they don't know what's going on, but those people start talking to them, and they tell them, well, yeah, we had this argument, whatever, we argue all the time. Well, what happened in the argument? Well, yeah, we started arguing over this, that, and the other. Well, did anything? No, there was one point where she shoved me because of this, and that's it. Boom, someone's going to jail. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the woman's going to jail. They incarcerate far more men than women. Far more men. And I want to say 10 to 20 times more. Okay? And anytime they incarcerate men and women on the same case, you can bet 9.9 times out of 10 they will go to the woman first as the informant against the man. If they're like co-defendants on a certain case, they'll go to the woman first, because they can get further with the woman, because the women will break faster. That's a fact. So anyways, you get arrested. You didn't expect that you would get arrested. They're going to take you to the jail. They're going to put you in the back of a squad car that I have never, not since I was a teenager, have I been in a squad car that had an actual seat in the back. And I don't know if it was even your typical squad car. Most of them don't. Most municipal squad cars, they don't. What they have is they have a piece of plastic, essentially, that acts as a seat. They're not going to strap you in, give you a seat belt, anything like that. They're going to put you back here. There's a piece of plastic. The windows are safety. Sometimes there will be cages on the windows, cages in front. They'll have a piece of plexiglass between you and the driver. They can hear you and communicate with you, but they're going to have all of that stuff there basically for their protection, because you could do whatever. You could vomit projectile vomit into the cab. You could spit at them. You could do it. And people have. So it's not like they do it for nothing. But, and essentially part of it's for cleaning, because a lot of people that they pick up throw up, they'll piss themselves. They could be, maybe they stomped them so much that they bled all over the inside of their police car. And when they get to the jail, a lot of times they'll either do it at the jail, if the jail says it's, it's fine, whatever, or they'll go back to wherever, say, their station. And it makes it very easy for them to, just open the thing up and hose it right out. You don't have a seat that you have to deal with. So it's going to be a big hunk of plastic. You're going to have to sit on there. And they don't like when you fidget around too much in the back. They don't like that very much at all. I learned that with one of the times I went in, which is a story for another time. But they'll get you in. Usually most county jails have an intake garage. So they'll pull around to the jail. They'll go up. They'll have a speaker and a camera. Most of the time they don't even have to tell the person, blah, blah, blah. They know that they're there. They see them in the camera and all that. They'll open the thing, the bay door. They'll go in. They'll park near. So you got one door, typically one, sometimes a couple, depending on where they're going to. They might have them just for egress, but there's going to be one door that's going to go into intake from the garage. They'll stop, they'll get out, they'll get you out. And if they have multiple perps with them, they'll get you all out all at once. Then a jail guard will come. They'll open the adjoining door. They will march you in. They'll have you stand pretty much in a row if it's multiple perps. Again, if it's just you, stand somewhere. They'll basically, they're essentially handing them off to the jailer at that point. They have officially arrested you, and now they're handing you off to the jailer. So there's a few things that they're going to have to give them at that time, and then what they'll typically do, unless they're going to hang out and shoot the shit and be a pain in the neck, what they'll do is they'll turn you around. They will take back their handcuffs. And most of the time, unless you're being a pain in the neck, you won't have to wear handcuffs again. They're just taking away their handcuffs, and they'll leave you in the care of the jailers. Now, what's typically going to happen, this is most places, they have to book you in. They have to process you. Once you come in and they take possession of you, they have to process you. And there is a process to processing you. And depending on how busy the jail is, how understaffed they are, how high a crime the place is, so on and so forth, how lazy the staff is, it could take quite some time for them to process you. Let me see. I think I was at one jail where I think I had been there for over 2 days and hadn't been fully processed. And that's nothing. Like, guys have told me when they've gone to Cook County Jail is a large portion of it, they said, is just literally a series of bullpens. Because bullpens are essentially the holding cells that they're going to use while they're trying to process you into the facility. Okay? They told me that Cook County Jail is literally just a series of bullpens, and what they'll do is they'll start you in one. They'll pull you out for a certain phase of processing, or they might do that in or near the bullpen, like literally just pull you out as a body, go over something with you, and then you're back in there, maybe pull you out one more for one other thing, and then they move you on to the next bullpen. And this can go on for a long time. As a matter of fact, a lot of times Cook County, depending on the charge, it's so big, there's so many people that come through there, and Cook County is probably always understaffed, that literally it's just a process of them getting you booked in for whatever, and they might literally release you, depending on what the charges are, such and such, so and so, in that whole process of bullpen to bullpen to bullpen, and you might actually get your first appearance or arraignment within that process, and then you're out the door. It happens. But, let's just say the counties I've spent most of my time between, Lake and Porter and like this little sliver of time in LaPorte County. Those are the 3 counties in Indiana that adjoin Lake Michigan. And as far as I'm concerned, those 3 counties are essentially just like southeastern suburbs of Chicago. The crime rates and all of that, of course, get easier and easier as you get away from the city, but the powers that be have worked very hard to bring a lot of Chicago crime and people from Chicago and house them in those counties. So it's not like going to jail in these counties is some kind of a cakewalk either. It's not the worst thing, of course, but it has degenerated from even 20 years ago, like going to Porter County Jail 20, 30 years ago, was, let's say, a much more pleasant experience than when they decided to move Cabrini Green into Portage, Indiana. Things got a lot worse. They built a new jail that could house far, far, far more inmates. And, just the atmosphere in the jail in general got worse. And the Porter County Jail, because this is the jail I spent a lot of time in, it was a state holding facility. It was a federal hold, so it stayed pretty busy. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So what they'll typically do when they get you in, the cop gets their cuffs off, they hand them over to the jailer. They're going to start pretty much a tub on you. It's just usually, not always, but usually it's a Rubbermaid tub. It's one of those big Rubbermaid tubs, the flat top. It's the same kind of tub. A lot of times it's the same kind of tub they'll give you when they put you in population. But it's 2 different tubs. A lot of times what you'll do is you get one tub that's going to be all your possessions tub, and they have a storage room where they keep all of these at, which guards have access to. And they get in trouble sometimes. That's another story too. So they'll basically go through whatever you bring in. They'll say, what do you have? You got your cell phone. They're going to take your cell phone. They're going to turn off your cell phone. They're going to log it. They're going to log everything that you have onto essentially a piece of paper, your wallet. They're going to take your money. If you come in with money, cash in your wallet, cash in your pocket, whatever. You have any cash or coin, that money is going to be taken. They're going to write down how much money you have. That's going to not immediately, but go on your account, your books there. But you may not have access to it for some time until they process it through, because you have to get an inmate. It's essentially your inmate number, and you're going to get that right away no matter what, and you're going to have to use that. It's a little code, because they're going to put a wristband on you too as part of the processing. They get a wristband, and it's going to have data on you on that wristband. You're going to need to use that data to access your account. So any money you have is going to go on an account. If you don't use any of that money there, if you're just there long enough to get in and get out, you get bonded out right away. Or if you had the money on you when you came in, let's just say a random arrest and you had a couple grand on you, and you already had a warrant with a bond. And that doesn't happen very often. But even if you did, and you were only there for a few hours and boom, boom, and you bonded yourself right out, they're going to give you what balance is left as part of it's like a county check, and you've got to go somewhere if you don't have a bank to cash it. That's the way it works. They take your money in cash, they put it on your account, and when you get released, if you still have money on there, it's going to go on this sort of, essentially it's a county check. And then you have to figure out where you can cash that. So they take all your possessions, they're going to put it in this Rubbermaid tub, and they're definitely going to take your belt. If you have a belt on, that's going. They're going to take your shoes. And they'll leave you your socks. I haven't been in a jail that didn't leave you your socks. They're going to take your shoes, I've had this happen in multiple institutions. One did not take my shoes. They took the shoelaces. I'm not kidding you. They make you unlace the laces from your shoes, and they take that. Shoelaces, belt, anything that you have on you that might be considered harmful to yourself or somebody else, they're going to take that. So they're not going to leave any jewelry. Jewelry's got to go. All jewelry's got to go. And we're talking bullpen 1 because they haven't done the strip search and all of that stuff. And that's part of the process. It's a little bit down the road. That's still bullpen 1. So you go in there in your socks, no belt on your pants. If you had a coat on, they're going to take that coat. You're going to basically go in there in your basics in that first bullpen, and it's going to be cold. They keep those bullpens cold for a reason. It's an ice box for a reason, because the hotter it is, the more likely, or just regular temperature it is, the more likely people are going to want to act out. So they keep it cold. It's very, very, very cold. They'll pull you back out. Sometimes the bullpens, the first bullpens actually have a phone in some places where you can try, because there's going to be a couple of different kinds of phones. There will be a phone that allows you to direct out, like make a collect call to someone. And then there's the phones that are only going to work with your information that they're going to give you on your wristband. So some places will actually put a phone that you could call direct out, maybe a collect call, in the bullpen, but I haven't seen one of those in a place in a really, really long time. And they might have changed that, who knows. Anyways, because for one thing, you got to figure, a lot of the people that come in that are going to be in bullpen 1, they have to give them, first off, they have to give you a phone call. And some will actually just have a phone there in lieu of that. Like, I'm not sure if it's a system phone or a regular out phone where you can make a regular phone call. Okay, because there's different, and they have to try to get you through to somebody. It's going to be a collect call. And it's going to cost a lot of money. Those phone systems in jails and prisons, they stick it to you. It's going to cost a lot more than, say, like a collect call from a payphone back when payphones still existed. So once they finally get around to it, they'll pull you back out of the bullpen. You'll be cold, probably. And if you're in there for a long time, they'll probably feed you if it's like breakfast time, lunchtime, dinner time. And if you haven't been in jail before, that's when you'll get your first taste of how bad the food is. The food sucks. It's terrible. And most jails are not required to give you all that much food. Most jails I've been in were required to give their full-grown male inmates 1,200 calories a day. 1,200 calories a day. 1,200 shitty calories a day. Their food sucks. And I've worked in the kitchen in, I guess just one jail. It sucks. And it wasn't the worst. And there are jails I've been at, the food is so bad. Oh, it's so bad. But, yeah, you might get a meal if you can stomach. And a lot of people, their first time in, they see that tray and they try eating that food if you're not used to it. You're not used to it. You try eating that food and you're going to go, oh my God. And it's going to be it's going to be an assault to your senses to taste things that are that bad. But, once you get in there for a while and you get hungry, you start getting hungry and they feed you 1,200 calories a day and you go in with no money on your books and you start selling trays for some coffee or whatever else you want. They don't give you coffee in there or anything, You have to get it through somebody on commissary. You got to buy it on commissary yourself, and it's freeze-dried, and you mix that with water, and that's coffee, And a lot of guys in there, they got their little scams where they sell guys, especially guys first coming in who they know can't eat. Like, if you go in and you're withdrawing on drugs, you're going to have a tough time eating just anyways. And they'll usually pull a thing like, hey, I'll give you a shot of coffee or this and that for a tray. And a lot of guys do it. And then those guys eat good, or they use that tray to trade with somebody else for something else they want or whatever. But you give up one tray, that's 1/3 of your calories. So now, instead of 1,200 calories, you got 800 calories you ate that day. What if a guy sells 2 trays for 2 shots? And I've seen guys come in terribly sick that sell a couple of trays a day. They give you 3 trays a day. So they sell a couple of trays a day, and they'll keep doing that the whole time they're sick. They're losing weight like crazy. And they're only getting about 400 calories a day because they'll try to eat maybe 1 tray, usually like breakfast, because a lot of the breakfasts are just cereal, juice, something like that. So, yeah, you'll get your first taste of how nasty jail food is. When they go through the process of booking you in, it's a lot of you sitting in a chair, answering a hell of a lot of questions that are just absolutely dull as all get out. When they're done with that, they're probably going to print you. They print you on a machine that looks like a copy machine. A guard will do it. Guards, pretty much anything they do that has to do with contacting you, they're wearing gloves. They have gloves. Like everywhere there's gloves. Everywhere, boxes of gloves. Because every time the guards contact you, they got gloves on. They'll print you. They'll roll your fingers on the screen. They'll put your hands flat on the screen, do all that. They'll take you over into the corner. They'll take your mug shot. Do you have any tattoos? They will take pictures of your tattoos and all that. Once you get finished with that, they will make a band that has your mug shot on it of your face and your information that you need to do your outgoing calls and all of that. Now, once they have all of that done, they will put you into intake. They will holding cells. And a lot of times from the holding cell, that's most of the time, you will go from the holding cell to your first appearance or arraignment at court. A lot of people are able to get a bond set at arraignment. If you don't have a bond set and you've got people on the outside that will bond you out, there's no bond. They oftentimes try to get you in arraignment within about 48 hours, whether it's going to the courthouse or whether it's video. They'll take you to another room in the jail, and there will be a video screen. The judge will be on the video screen. They'll have cameras so he can see you, and they'll read you the charge, and there's things about that are really seedy that I'd like to go into in another video, but typically within the first couple of days. So hopefully you don't get arrested on a Friday afternoon, or you will not be seeing anyone by video or at the courthouse until at least Monday morning. If you don't have a bond, you can get a bond set by then. Now they are putting phones in a lot of the holding cells. For a long time, I did not see phones in the holding cells. Most bullpens don't have phones. Like, you really have to keep asking them. And if you're real shitty about it, they can just keep putting it off. And they, we had our hands full. They don't have to give you a phone call. Remember that. That's the one thing to remember. These people, they don't have to do shit. A lot of them take these jobs because they couldn't make it in police academy. They couldn't get accepted as a county mountie. Or something like that. They couldn't get accepted into the Army because they had some kind of mental, physical disability, but they could get a job as a county police, and you have to call them officer this, officer that, because they're considered, at county level, they're considered a county officer. They're not a corrections officer, and you can't call them CO or they'll correct you. You have to call them officer. You say officer this, officer that. But a lot of them, they're from the towns around that jail. And if that's like in the case of Porter County, I grew up in southern Porter County, so I knew one of the guards. We went to high school together. They were 2 years older than me. That was the only person I did know. But These guards oftentimes end up getting in relationships with people in jail. They get in trouble because they'll screw around with people in the jail, men with women or women with men. This happens in jail. This isn't just like a prison fantasy. These things happen in jail. And there's all kinds of seedy things happen in jail, because you have to remember, a lot of these guards, whether they came there for good reasons or bad reasons or whatever, at the end of the day, these guards are all people. And people do messed up things. And the sad thing is, guards have a certain amount of buffer and protection in what they do and their actions. And, you know, if guards get caught doing certain things, and it's very public, and somebody makes a big stink of it, that doesn't make the jail look good. That doesn't make the warden look good. They don't want that happening. So guards get away with a lot. It's not good, and I'm not saying all of them are trying to, but they get away with a lot. And they can make your time really crappy. If you have a guard that, let's say that they don't like, let's say they had somebody with a drug problem in their family, and this person did this and that, wreaked havoc on the family or whatever, you know, and they look you up, because these guards, they spend a lot of their time just looking people up. I mean, it's like, to them, soap opera like, you know, they'll get your whole thing and all that, and it's so let's say that you did something very similar to a personal situation that they had. I mean, they'll kind of mark you as you're now on their shit list, and they can make life hard for you. And jail life is already hard in the sense that there's so much sensory deprivation that happens in jail. Even if you're not down in the hole, it's still, just in regular population, from the holding cell, pre-classification, regular population, it's sensory deprivation, sensory deprivation, sensory deprivation. And in jail, like, no jail that I was ever in had any rec, like outside. You never got outside. I spent 14 months in one place on one stretch, 14 months. And if I had not gotten into trustee and was able to go out and mow the lawn a couple of times, and you know what? The other guys fucked it up, by the way. These other jagoffs who had to just, anyways, fucked it up. And for guys who had been sitting there for a long time, that just, I was in there 14 months, one stretch. 14 months. And they only turn on the air exchange every once in a while when they think about it, or when the inmates clamor enough, please, 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 could you give us some fresh air? They'll turn on this air exchange. They'll get some fresh air in there. That's serious. Sun? Almost every pod had a sunroom, and if you were lucky, you had some pods that had these little windows in the second tier cells. That was it. That was all the sunlight you were getting. So a lot of guys, me included, you're in there long enough, and the sun will hit this skylight, and it'll come down, you know, depending on where the sun is at in the sky. The light from the skylight will track through the day room. And there's a lot of times that I've spent many days, day after day after day, at some point in the day, I would get somewhere and I would stand there while the sun was in that spot so I could just get some kind of sun on me. You're not going to get rec. I've never been in one county or city that had rec. My advice is, this is not legal advice. Get out as fast as you can. One way or another. You're not going to be treated very well. If you got people on the outside that can get you out, get out. Whatever you were doing to end up in there, I would stop doing it. as long as if we're talking about within, something reasonable, I've known very few people who have gone in there, let's say this, that were just entirely righteous people, absolutely persecuted or prosecuted for the wrong reason. Not really known any of those, but here's the fine line. Many, maybe the majority of men I've met in jail, maybe not a majority, a lot of them, 50-50, were in there because of policy. Not law. It's not like common law, like they didn't deprive someone, hurt somebody, nothing like that. That's law. That's real common law. Did you hurt or deprive somebody? No. That's why it's always the people versus, it's the state versus. You'll hear your charge when you go in the first time, and the first appearance, by the way, is a whole topic all on its own. And there are ways to maybe handle that's better than the ways that I always did on all those times that I was taken for my arraignment or first appearance. If I would have known then what I knew now, I don't know, maybe I'd be dead, because I would have probably gotten out a few times much earlier and would have gotten far better at working the system. The thing is, by the time I got to the point where I understood the system very well and got myself released, because I did a few things that I knew the system didn't want, I knew they didn't have much on me. They didn't really have a charge on me. I got released. By that time, I had stopped most of that life, and I had only had really 2 significant relapses after that. And they weren't big. They weren't like the way things used to be. They were kind of more small, but then it eventually stopped. And the reason that all of this stopped really was because I decided I'm either going to understand life. I'm going to either work as hard as I can to understand everything I can about what I see as the most important things and aspects to life, which is one of the reasons why I spend so much time studying the language of the Bible, because there's problems. There's serious problems in there. That is easy. It's arguably the most important book to not Western civilization, the world, civilization. That's why I spend so much time on it. But I spend a lot of time on other things too. History is very important. I think a lot of things, just the way that the world runs today and everything, it's so hinged on believing the official narrative of history. But I decided, I've got to figure these things out, or I've got to work at figuring these things out, because if I don't, I'm just going to end up back where I started. Back where the confusion and the not knowing that something wasn't right but not being able to articulate it, I would end up back where that took me in the first place, which is finding solace in drugs, and most specifically opiates, which are a terrible, terrible drug to be addicted to. So, that's basically what can be expected from an arrest. Typically a surprise arrest, and a lot of them are surprises. Most people aren't ready for them. Most people aren't prepared to be arrested. I would tell anybody, even if they've never even considered a crime, you should certainly look into what are the possibilities if you get arrested. And maybe you should formulate some kind of a contingency plan. Just a contingency plan is a good thing, because it can happen. Okay? Arrests can happen to people who didn't even do anything all that bad. Or something not bad at all. Remember, possessing a drug does not break any common laws whatsoever. You haven't hurt anyone. You haven't deprived anyone of anything. Okay? What you've done is you have committed a policy violation of a contract and an understanding that you are not fully aware of. Keep that in mind. And that's a lot of charges that people are taken away and sentenced to a lot of time, oftentimes, for violating policy. So, I really hope that helped. And I'm going to try to make more of these videos in this series on the Obery Project, criminal justice, just things having to do with what I've seen, what I've experienced, what I know or understand about the criminal justice system, crimes, and things like that, because they're all, I think, helpful. They all contribute to where I've ended up today. They're all a dark part of life that we don't want to see anybody experience. I don't want to see anyone experience a lot of these things that I've seen or I've done or I've experienced, both in and out of jail, not only when I was using, but sometimes I ended up in jail when I wasn't using too, just in general. And if you've been in there and if you experienced these places and what it's like, you don't want anybody in there either. So, hope this went well. And this was good advice if you know somebody that you think might, is looking like they might end up the subject of a surprise arrest. Send this video over to them. Or like I said, just use it to consider what might happen if you get arrested and you didn't see it coming, as a good contingency plan. People have contingency plans for all kinds of things that they didn't expect. It's called insurance, and it doesn't hurt. So that's that. So until next time, I hope everybody is very well. We'll see you again soon.